There is a kind of clean that has nothing to do with scrubbing, nothing to do with products, nothing to do with spending a Saturday exhausted, working through a house that will look the same again by Wednesday. I know what that other kind of clean looks like because I grew up inside it. My mother's home in Osaka, my grandmother's home, spaces where nothing was ever dramatically cleaned because nothing was ever allowed to become dirty. Where order wasn't achieved, it was simply maintained quietly through habits so small they were almost invisible. Then I moved overseas. And over 40 years, I forgot every single one of those habits. By my late 50s, my home looked nothing like the ones I grew up in. Surfaces cluttered, drawers that couldn't close properly, a cleaning day that left me tired and produced results that lasted about 4 days. I had more cleaning products than my grandmother owned in her entire life, and my house was measurably worse than hers ever was. I'm Keiko Nakamura. I'm 72, and what I'm going to share with you are 7 habits, not techniques, not products, not organizational systems, that I relearned in my 60s and that changed my home more permanently than anything I'd bought or tried in the 4 decades before. These habits are old. They are simple, and the cleaning industry, which profits from complexity and from your sense that you need specialized solutions for every surface and problem, would very much prefer you never think about them too carefully. Let's start. Habit 1. Everything has one place, and it always returns there. When I was a child in Osaka, I never saw my mother search for anything. Keys, scissors, the good knife, the spare buttons. She went to where they lived, and they were there. Not because she had an exceptional memory, because things didn't move. They had a place. They returned to that place every single time. This sounds so obvious, it barely seems worth saying. And yet, look around the room you're in right now. How many things are there because they drifted there, not because that's where they belong? The drift is how clutter accumulates, not dramatically, not all at once. One object put down temporarily in the wrong place, then another, until the surface is claimed and stays claimed. My mother would have put each of those things back before the drift could begin. The habit is not tidying. Tidying is reactive. You address the accumulation after it's happened. This habit is different. It's returning things immediately as a reflex, so accumulation never starts. I began rebuilding this habit at 63 with the smallest possible version. The television remote always went back to the same spot on the table. The keys always went on the hook by the door. That's all I started with. 2 things, 2 places, always. Within 2 weeks, something had shifted in how my home felt. Not because 2 items were consistently placed, but because the habit itself had begun to extend. The logic spread. Other things started finding permanent places. The drift slowed, then stopped in room after room. The commercial organizing industry sells you boxes, labels, drawer dividers, and storage solutions. None of it works without this habit underneath. With this habit, you barely need any of it. Habit 2. If it takes under a minute, do it now. My grandmother never let small things accumulate. A drop spilled on the counter was wiped before she moved to the next task. A cup rinsed immediately after use. A cloth refolded and returned before leaving the room. Not because she was anxious or perfectionistic, because she understood something about how small things compound. A minute of immediate action prevents 10 minutes of later reaction. More importantly, the undone thing doesn't disappear when you leave the room. It follows you. It sits at the edge of your attention, a small weight added to all the other small weights, until the cumulative heaviness is something you can feel but can't quite identify. I spent decades doing the opposite. I would see something that needed doing. A dish, a piece of mail, a cloth on the counter, and Theo Bisterti, does chi kutri aninchai, and tell myself later. And later would arrive loaded with everything I'd deferred, and I'd either deal with it exhausted or defer it again. When I finally applied this habit consistently, the feeling I noticed wasn't efficiency, it was lightness. Each small thing dealt with immediately was one less thing the back of my mind was quietly tracking. By the end of the day, I wasn't carrying the weight of undone tasks into the evening. This is not a productivity technique. It is a form of mental hygiene. And it costs nothing and requires no products whatsoever, which is precisely why no one is advertising it to you. Habit 3, keep only what you actually use. I want to pause here and tell you about something I wrote. After I returned to Japan in my early 60s and began genuinely recovering these habits, testing them in my own home, feeling what changed and why, I kept detailed notes. What each habit felt like to apply, where the resistance came from, what was underneath the clutter I'd accumulated over 40 years. Those notes became a book. I called it The Habits of a Quiet House, because quiet is what these habits produce. Not silence exactly, something more specific. The quiet of a house that isn't demanding anything from you, that isn't cluttered with unfinished business, physical or otherwise. The chapter on this third habit, keeping only what you use, is the one I find hardest to read now without feeling something, because writing it meant being honest about what I'd been holding on to and why. And that honesty was uncomfortable before it was freeing. The book is in the pinned comment below. I hear from readers regularly. Margaret from Ireland wrote to say she'd finally cleared the spare room that had been unusable for 3 years after reading it. She said it took 2 afternoons and she cried once and felt better than she had in years. Kenneth from Australia said the chapter on this habit was the first time he understood that his cluttered house wasn't a laziness problem. Dorothy from Canada said she gave the book to her daughter and they sorted through the house together and it brought them closer than they'd been in a long time. It's there if you want it. Back to the habit. In my mother's kitchen, every item had earned its place through regular use. Nothing was there because it had been expensive, or because it was a gift, or because it might be useful someday. Those reasons, expense, guilt, hypothetical future need, are how drawers fill up with things that cost you attention every time you open them, even when you're not consciously thinking about them. My grandmother said something I remember clearly. A thing you don't use still asks something of you. Space. Cleaning. The small cognitive task of registering its presence. Multiplied across hundreds of objects, the asking becomes exhausting. The habit is not aggressive decluttering. It's ongoing discernment. Looking at what you own with the honest question, do I actually use this? And when the answer is no, releasing it, not with guilt, not with drama, with simple recognition that it's done its time and can go. When I began doing this in my 60s, my home didn't become sparse or cold. It became navigable. I could find things. I could clean surfaces because there were fewer objects on them. The kitchen in particular, which had been a source of low-level daily frustration, became a room I enjoyed being in. Habit 4. Close the day with 5 minutes of order. Before I sleep each night, I do 5 minutes. Not cleaning, resetting. The distinction matters. Cleaning addresses what's already accumulated. Resetting prevents accumulation from carrying over into the next day. It's returning the house to its neutral state before you stop using it for the day, so that when you walk in tomorrow morning, you're not immediately confronted with yesterday's unfinished business. My mother did this without thinking about it. The kitchen was put back to its starting position after the evening meal. The living room returned to order before bed. The bathroom left ready for morning. It wasn't a routine she'd invented. It's a strategy itirtanechachitskatin, the taktiich entain. It was simply how the day ended. When I finally rebuilt this habit in my own home, what struck me first was the mornings. I'd been starting my days inside the residue of the previous evening, a cup on the counter, something left on the table, the general sense of things not quite in place, and absorbing that small disorder before I'd done anything, before I'd had a thought or a cup of tea. The day began slightly behind. When the evening reset became consistent, the mornings changed. Walking into a kitchen that was already in order is a different experience than walking into one that isn't. The day starts from a different place. The effect is disproportionate to the 5 minutes it costs. Habit 5. Every space has one clear purpose. My grandmother's dining table was for eating, not for mail or laundry folding or working from home or placing things temporarily while deciding where they go. For eating. This sounds restrictive. In practice, it is the opposite. When a space has one clear purpose, it is always ready for that purpose. You don't have to clear it before you use it. You don't have to reconfigure it. It simply is what it is, available, functional, clear. I spent years using my home as a collection of multi-purpose zones where everything happened everywhere. I worked at the kitchen table and ate on the sofa and read in bed, and then couldn't sleep and couldn't understand why my home always felt smaller and more congested than it actually was. When I began reassigning clear purposes to spaces, the table for meals, the chair by the window for reading, the bedroom for sleeping only, something happened that I hadn't expected. The spaces began to feel larger, not physically. They hadn't changed. But mentally, each space was doing one thing and doing it fully, rather than doing many things badly. The cleaning benefit is direct. A surface with one purpose stays cleaner than a surface with many purposes. Mail doesn't accumulate on a table that's only for eating. Dishes don't appear in a room that's only for relaxing. The boundaries clean themselves. Habit 6. Prepare tomorrow before you sleep tonight. This habit is related to the evening reset, but distinct from it. The reset returns the house to neutral. This habit goes one step further. It actively prepares the house for tomorrow morning. What will you need first thing? Is it ready? Where is it? My mother laid out the next day's things before she slept. And cha-chu-chu, and no, and forstat. Not elaborately, just enough. The kettle filled. The tea ready. Anything needed in the morning already in place. She did this quickly, naturally, as the final act of the evening. When I began doing this in my 60s, the effect on my mornings was immediate. The scrambling disappeared. The searching disappeared. The low-grade friction of starting the day by looking for things and solving small problems before I was fully awake. Inkawan. Gone. The cleaning connection is less obvious but real. A house prepared for tomorrow is a house where tomorrow doesn't create disorder while it's still beginning. You're not pulling things out, rummaging, improvising. You're moving through a space that's already arranged for you. Less mess is created. Less cleaning is needed. Habit 7. Care for what serves you. This is the one that took me longest to understand, and the one that now seems most important. My grandmother treated her possessions with care, not sentimentality. Care, kinche, anakacha, the saki, insis iti, kakkorgicher, and at the spixti, ananjarekaj. The knife she used daily was kept sharp, dried properly, stored correctly. The pot used every morning was cleaned with attention, not just rinsed. The cloth used for surfaces was washed and dried properly and returned to its place. This care extended the life of everything she owned. Her kitchen equipment lasted decades. Her home required less maintenance because nothing was being neglected into deterioration. But there was something else happening. Caring for objects that serve you is a practice of attention, of presence. When you wash a cup carefully rather than carelessly, you're briefly, entirely present in that small act. And that presence, practiced repeatedly in small moments throughout the day, creates a different relationship with your home, not ownership, something closer to partnership. I don't say this abstractly. When I started caring for my things, genuinely caring, not just using and ignoring, my home started feeling different in a way I still find difficult to articulate. Less like a space I was managing, more like a space I was living inside attentively. And practically, things that are cared for stay clean. Surfaces regularly wiped don't accumulate grime. Objects properly stored don't get damaged or lost. The habit of care is itself a cleaning strategy, sustained daily without effort, because it's simply how you treat what serves you. None of these habits require products. None require an afternoon of exhausting effort. None require you to reorganize your entire home or spend money or follow a complicated methodology. They require attention, consistency, the willingness to do small things immediately rather than large things eventually. The cleaning industry's business model depends on you not knowing this. Complexity sells products. The idea that you need specialized solutions for each surface and problem creates a purchasing habit that generates billions annually. A home maintained through simple daily habits costs almost nothing and stays cleaner than one subjected to periodic, intensive cleaning with expensive products. My grandmother knew this. My mother knew this. I forgot it for 40 years and spent 40 years buying what the aisle told me I needed. I'm not forgetting it again. The Habits of a Quiet House, the full account of how I rebuilt each of these habits and what shifted as I did, is in the pinned comment below. And I'll see you in the next video, where the simplicity, as always, goes deeper than you might expect.